Go inside the Crimson Tide with your hosts Rodney Orr and Gary Harris, keeping you informed on everything Alabama. Tider Insider TV, brought to you by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports.
Anybody that knows Will Anderson and that know what type of person I am and competitor I am probably knew that I was going to be playing in this game.
Football players like playing football. Imagine that. I mean, I'm just stunned at the reaction from a lot of people that Anderson, Young, and others shouldn't play in the game. I don't get it. Good evening, everybody, and welcome into Tider Insider TV, brought to you by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports. Alongside Rodney Orr, I'm Gary Harris. National Signing Day is tomorrow. We'll have that for you coming up a little bit later on in the show. But first, Alabama will face Kansas State for the first time ever in the All-State Sugar Bowl down in New Orleans, December 31st. That's New Year's Eve at 11 a.m. And the Crimson Tide is going to have, other than the transfer portal players, is going to have its roster intact. This is footage of the Crimson Tide working out today in full pads inside the Hank Crisp indoor facility. None of Alabama's players opted out to prepare for the draft. None. Head coach Nick Saban said he didn't expect any of the players to opt out of the game. Two juniors that are expected to go very high in the first round, Bryce Young and Will Anderson Jr., are playing against the Big 12 champions, Kansas State. Anderson and Young are not playing for their status, but for their legacy and the commitment they made to their team. Again, this is stuff that has always been done in football, and now we're shocked when players opt in instead of opting out. Alabama will leave for New Orleans on Monday. Other players, Rodney, notable players that they thought might opt out: Jordan Battle, Henry To'oTo'o, Jahmyr Gibbs, DeMarco Hellams, Brian Branch, Jalen Moody, Byron Young. You can go through the list. Cam Latu, Emil Ekiyor, bunch of these guys. But instead, DJ Dell's another one. Rodney, they're going to play, and I want to bring you in. We've talked about this already on my radio show this week. Again, and I'm going to make it clear where I stand. I said all along, I think you should play for your team in the game. And I do think, though, it says something about the culture and the program at Alabama when we see other programs that aren't in the playoff. I'll mention Tennessee by name because here they are in their first New Year's Six bowl game, the Orange Bowl, in years, and their two best receivers aren't going to play in that game for them. But for Alabama, you've got Bryce Young and Will Anderson Jr., both of whom are in the running to be the #1 overall pick, and they are going to play. I think that's the way it ought to be, and I think it says a lot about Nick Saban and the program he's built here at Alabama.
Yeah, you know, we said last week, Gary, he has a track record. The culture here, I kind of think, dictates that. We talked about a couple of years ago against Michigan. Jerry Jeudy played. Henry Ruggs played. Those guys were expected to go early, as you knew, and you know, they played in the game. So we've seen it in other games in the past. So I don't think, like you said, I think you said it right. It's not really a surprise. Is the trend for these guys to opt out? Yeah. I mean, it's obviously a growing trend around the country. So you kind of come to expect it because it's the way it's kind of going. But to see this, I think it's a really great sign for this program. Because, Gary, just a few weeks ago, as you know, before that Ole Miss game, I mean, the Sharks were really out in that water. And I think this says so much. The way they have finished this season, that these guys have not opted out, and the way this recruiting class is going, it shows that Nick Saban still has his program where people expect it to be.
It does. And again, I'm shocked because a lot of people that I respect have told me, or I've heard them say on television or the radio, they've got nothing to gain by playing in this game. You know, they could get an injury. Listen, football, you know, we hear the term injury prone. Football, everybody's injury prone. There's a chance every time you go out on the football field that you're going to get injured. It is a collision sport. There's also a chance that you could be training for the combine or the NFL draft and your knee grab in the turf when you're running a 40-yard dash or going through drills. You can't protect yourself from injury. It's part of it. You just play as hard as you can, and you hope that it doesn't happen. But when you start gauging everything against the injury, I mean, you could argue by some people's logic, Rodney, not mine, not yours, but by some people's logic, why did Will Anderson and Bryce Young even play this year, period? You know, coming off their sophomore seasons, if they'd have been eligible for the draft, they would have both been top 5 picks. They could have just hired trainers and nutritionists and just sat out this year and tried to avoid injury. Football players play football. That's what they do.
Mm-hmm. You know, I really think that one of the things I like about this, though, Gary, you have a lot of young players now that are entering the program. Mm-hmm. You've got 6 or 7, 8 early enrollees, guys that are coming into the program. When they see Will Anderson, Bryce Young, DeMarco Hellams, Jordan Battle, all Brian these Branch. Guys playing. This is what creates that culture. You hand it down to the next generation of players. And I think that's something that's really encouraging as you start to think about the future.
It absolutely is. And again, I don't, I want to give Alabama players credit, but at the same time, I think they're doing, like Rodney said, what we expected them to do. When you come to Alabama, you see it all the way through. It's a chance to win the Sugar Bowl and go 11-2. So for the people that say there's nothing to be gained by playing in this game, what's wrong with you? I mean, you're playing in the Sugar Bowl. You're playing to win 11 games. For this team, this season, that means something, and it should. When people start saying the Sugar Bowl means nothing, I don't get where you're coming from. That's all I can say. And now it's time for Coach Talk. Alabama will play Kansas State in the All-State Sugar Bowl on December 31st down at the Caesars Superdome in New Orleans. The Wildcats have done something no other college football team was able to do this season, beat TCU. KSU's big win in the Big 12 championship game earned the Wildcats the conference championship, and according to Alabama head coach Nick Saban, it's earned them respect. Saban says this team is worthy of the Sugar Bowl stage. They're good.
You know, they beat TCU in the championship game. They were ahead of them 28-10 in the other game, the first game that they played against them. This is a good, old-fashioned, well-coached, disciplined, tough, good football team. And they could make an argument that, since they beat one of the teams that are in the playoffs, maybe they should be in the playoffs. So I think this is a really good team.
Ronnie, let's talk about the Wildcats, and you see Vaughn right there. Boy, is he a little electric back. I mean, that guy's dangerous. This is a team got 10 wins. They lost to Tulane, which had its best season in many, many years, Texas, and then TCU, and then they got revenge on TCU in the Big 12 championship game. Will Howard, Adrian Martinez have both played at quarterback. We mentioned Vaughn, who is an electric back. Little guy, but powerful with speed. Defensively, there he is. They're physical, and they hit you. And they play team football. This is a team. When maybe their individuals don't stack up to Alabama in terms of accolades and so forth like that, but as a football team, they can play with anybody in the country.
Number 22, Vaughn, you compare him a lot to Darren Sproles.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
He was a great player at Kansas State.
Sure was.
You talk about the injuries that they had. Martinez was doing a really good job at quarterback transfer from Nebraska. He goes down. Howard leads them to the Big 12 title game. They found a way to win that game. Look, they were out of gas in that game. They had a goal line stand. You remember that goal line stand in overtime? Gary, I mean, that was a defense that was totally gassed. They found a way to win the game. That's kind of the spirit they play with.
For Alabama, okay, and yeah, there's some players in the portal, but for the most part, the roster is going to remain intact. I'm glad they're approaching it as a big game because I think it's a big game. I think it's going to be a tough game. I think Kansas State is capable of winning this football game.
Absolutely, they are. We talked about all the reasons they are. I mean, they're well coached. Look, this is a hungry football team. This is a team that has an opportunity to take the next step. I don't care if Alabama isn't in the playoffs, or maybe they didn't have the year we're accustomed to Alabama having. It's still Alabama. And for an opportunity that Kansas State has here, that's motivation enough.
All right, we'll have more football coming up later on in the show, recruiting. But first, let's move on to basketball. And the Crimson Tide made it up to number 4 last week in the AP poll, but then they ran into Gonzaga on Saturday in Birmingham. Hard sellout. Tickets were going for a lot of money. Heck of a game. Alabama, though, falls 100-90. Brandon Miller, the true freshman, had 36. That's the most any freshman has scored this season. Alabama was fine on offense. He scored 90 points, but boy, defensively, they got shredded. Drew Timme got the ball where he wanted. He had a big game. Alabama turned it over 21 times, and it just wasn't enough. Still, Rodney, Alabama's playing Jackson State right now. We'll update you on the score here in a little bit. But the Crimson Tide at 9-2, they only fell to number 9 in the country. They've played a lot of these types of games. The Gonzagas, the Michigan States, the North Carolinas, the Houstons. Hey, that's what big-time programs do. They play big-time competition. It makes you better come March.
Yeah, I thought they responded well after that Houston game, too, Gary. We were a little concerned about that. I mean, obviously, they lost to Gonzaga, but, that's a really good team, obviously. This is going to pay a lot of dividends, I think, when March gets here. The competition that they're playing now, they're not going to be intimidated.
And right now, playing Jackson State, Mo Williams, the coach of the former Bama star and NBA standout, 29-21 with about 4 minutes to go. Alabama's not exactly blowing out the Tigers, but of course they're still without Namari Burnett with that wrist, and Clowney missing tonight due to illness. So Alabama a little shorthanded, but up 29-21 over Jackson State, 4 minutes to go in the first half. Well, still to come on Tider Insider Television, we'll tell you about how the Tide scored a big recruiting flip on Tuesday. And we'll get you ready for what could be another big finish for Alabama and another top-ranked recruiting class. We're going to run it all down for you when we come back. Also, a little bit later on, we'll be getting to your phone calls, emails, and tweets. As always, the phone number 205-348-WVUA. That's 348-9882. Or you can email us at the address on your screen. We'll be right back with the only show that takes you inside the Crimson Tide, Tider Insider TV.
I get to play at the best program. Alabama's the best program, and I'm super thankful for that. I mean, I start practice December 15th for the bowl practice, so just trying to get mentally right and hit the ground running when I get there.
Well, you can't sign until tomorrow, but Northridge offensive tackle Wilkin Formby held a signing ceremony along with some other Northridge athletes a couple of weeks ago, and he's already practicing, man. Rodney, Alabama's got some early enrollees, a couple local players in addition to Formby. Hewitt Trustful's defensive lineman Hunter Osborne's already here, Rod, taking part in Sugar Bowl practices, and they're, I think, 2 of 6 that are already here, and a couple more might be on campus soon.
Yeah, I think Caleb Downs is coming in, the 5-star safety. 5-star running back Justice Haynes, I think he'll be here. And also there's a chance, I think Caden Proctor, who just committed today, flipped from Iowa, the 5-star offensive tackle, he may come in at some point. So it's going to be a really good group.
Yeah, more on Proctor in just a few seconds. Welcome back to TITV, brought to you by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports. With Rodney Orr, I'm Gary Harris. Alabama currently has 25 commitments in its class of 2023. And the nation's top-ranked recruiting class, as Ronnie just alluded to, received another seismic boost today. Not unexpected. Caden Proctor, the Iowa commit previously, was in town over the weekend. You can see he put Latham and Booker on his tweet that he put out with him. I think they feel like they're going to all be on that offensive line together. But, Ronnie, this guy, 6'7", 330 pounds, in a suburb of Des Moines, Iowa, right there in the Hawkeyes' backyard, had committed to them. Number 1 offensive tackle prospect, according to some in the country. I can't say how big, literally and figuratively. Look at this. Now, listen, Alabama signed players like this before. It's no guarantee that he's going to start, but I think he'll have a chance to start right away at tackle.
Yeah, he really will. I mean, look at that nasty streak. Those poor little Iowa boys. I mean, he really
That's unfair.
took care of them. Yeah. But, you know, Gary, again, you mentioned, I mean, he's an outstanding player. He's a guy that's certainly going to have an opportunity to play. Alabama's lost some offensive linemen that have transferred out. They're leaving the program. So I think this is really, obviously, a huge pickup. A great recruiting class in terms of the offensive line. Wilkin Formby, you know, Proctor here, obviously. Rock McElderry, he's here early as well from Anniston. So you've got a really good group, and there are others.
Proctor led his high school team to back-to-back state championships. You do, I mean, I get it. Iowa's not a huge state in terms of football prospects. This is a major blow for the Hawkeyes. But, Rodney, let's just be honest. When you look at the two programs, when you look at the number of offensive linemen that are going on in the NFL playing for championships, Iowa's offense, quite frankly, was one of the worst in the country this past year. You can't blame the young man.
Not at all. I mean, you just hit it. That's exactly what I was going to mention is they were number 130 in the country in offense. You know, you have an opportunity to come play at Alabama with great players. And I'll say this, too, Gary, as you looked at that graphic that he had with Booker, with Latham, Alabama's starting to load up on those impressive offensive linemen again. I think they're going to start taking over that, you know, that line of scrimmage.
Again, the video there's just amazing. I mean, he's blocking guys my size. It's just, it's unfair. It really, really is. All right, Ronnie, Bama not done yet. We expect them to have the number 1 class, but there's some players out there they're still recruiting that are uncommitted. Let's start. We'll get to the big pair here in the state, but let's start with the cornerback, Damari Brown.
Well, you know, he's obviously a really good player. You know, Gary, his brother was at Central Florida. He's transferring over to Miami. I really thought, you know, Damari might be leaning this way, but maybe he ends up at Miami now. Same high school, obviously, as Patrick Surtain when he came out. All
right, the two that everybody's watching, though, in-state, Carver Montgomery, teammates, they're going to sign with the same school, James Smith and Quay Russaw. This has been a very, and there they are, talking about grown men, this has been a very intense recruitment process. It's going to end tomorrow. Do you think it'll be Bama?
I do. Right now, that would be my prediction. I've been saying this for about 6 weeks. I feel really good where Alabama is. Watch James Smith. I mean, he's 320 pounds. Watch this.
That's unbelievable.
Wow.
Put him on offense.
So I do feel good about Alabama. Again, Auburn's really pushing. They're trying to, certainly Hugh Freeze would love to nothing more than to pick up that coup, but right now I feel good about Alabama.
All right, Ronnie, before we get to the break, flipping works both ways.
Yep.
Alabama's flipped some players and will continue to work to do so. You have to worry about your own players. Polito, the offensive lineman out of California, flipped to Arizona, although obviously Alabama's get Proctor. But Tony Mitchell, the longtime commit, the defensive back from Thompson High School in Alabaster, is there concern about him maybe going to Auburn or Texas A&M?
Well, he's visited those places a lot. I think Auburn is certainly making a very, very strong run there. We'll see what happens with Tony Mitchell. I talked to someone up there today, and they simply said, look, it's unpredictable. It's unpredictable. Could end up at could end up at any of the three places. So we'll just have to see.
Stay tuned. We'll find out on Wednesday. Well, still to come on Tider Insider Television. Alabama women's basketball looks to stay hot against Southeast Louisiana this afternoon. We'll let you know if the Tide won its 8th straight. Plus, we'll be getting your phone calls, emails, and tweets. If you got those questions or comments, you need to give us a call right now, 205-348-WVUA. That's 348-9882. You can email us at the address on your screen or tweet at us. Use the hashtag TITV. We'll be right back. We want to hear from you, Tider Insider Nation, next, right here on Tider Insider TV. Alabama women's basketball, red hot. The Tide took care of Southeast Louisiana this afternoon at Coleman Coliseum, 55-45. Alabama's now won 8 straight. This is the second straight game with more than 15 made three-point baskets. So Alabama's shooting it well. The Tide will face North Florida Thursday at noon inside Coleman Coliseum. And Rodney, every time you start to feel good about Alabama men's basketball, they'll wake you up. 33-32. They lead Memphis now with less than a minute to go in the first half. They're having their hands full with the Tigers that are 1-10 on the season. Also, we want to mention some breaking news. This had been reported, I guess, about 10, 12 days ago. But I think Alabama wanted to get through the recruiting cycle. Charles Kelly has officially been named the new defensive coordinator for Coach Prime out at Colorado. I like that hire for Colorado. I think Charles Kelly's a good coach.
Yeah, veteran coach. I mean, obviously a very good recruiter. He'll give them a presence in the Southeast in terms of their recruiting. So, yeah, I think it's a really solid hire.
I do, too. And Coach Kelly was a great coach here in the secondary for Alabama. Now he's moving on to be the defensive coordinator at Colorado. All right, let's jump out on the phone line. Sammy, our pal, the Tomato Man up in Walker County. Hey, Sammy, what's going on?
Merry Christmas, Gary.
You too.
Merry Christmas, Rodney, and the families, and all best wishes. And, guys, I just want to put a shout-out to Brody and John Kroll and their daughter, Reagan, I believe, the work they're doing up there at the Big Oak Ranch, and that presentation of little Isaiah, that commercial, they hit it out of the park. What an inspirational. You'll be a better person when you see it. And those folks are doing some great work up there, guys. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Sammy. At Big Oak Ranch with John Coral and his family have been doing great work for a long, long time, and a lot of people appreciate their efforts. And thank you for for that. Shout out to them, and Merry Christmas to everybody at the Big Oak Ranch over in Etowah County. All right, let's get our email of the day, and this email question of the day is brought to you by KDM Service Corporation, serving your family like our family for all your heating and air conditioning needs. It's KDM Service Corporation. Will Brian Branch enter the NFL draft? Scott in Alabaster. It's a great question. He's a junior eligible player. I thought this year, Rodney, he was Alabama's best defensive back. I think he's their best tackler. I think he's their most physical player. He can cover. I've seen where he's projected to be a first-round pick. He said today he's not even thought about it. I think he'll be thinking about it. My guess is he probably will, but I don't know that
I
for
would
sure.
go with you. I think he, like you said, he's probably going to be projected when it's all said and done as a firm first-round pick. So my guess is Brian Branch is going early.
Yeah, he had a good year. Thank you, Scott, there in Alabaster. More phone calls and emails when this TITV Tuesday night pre-National Signing Day edition continues. There's the phone number, 205-348-9882. We'll be right back after this. We're back. I get it. Alabama's played a tough pre-conference schedule. They open SEC play next week at Mississippi State, but only up 33-32 on Jackson State. Mo Williams' team 1-10. Better get going. That's halftime score. You better pick it up in the second half, Rod. That's not what you were looking for tonight. All right, let's head out to the phone lines, and Caleb is with us up in Hubbardville. Hey, Caleb.
Hey, guys. I want to wish y'all Merry Christmas.
Thank you.
And I just wanted to know about the Maryland transfer tight end from and how Alabama's looking with him, and let's end the year with a Sugar Bowl victory. Thanks, guys.
All right, Rodney. And, this is Alabama needs a pass-catching tight end. This young man from Maryland played there for Loxley. He can catch the football.
Yeah, C.J. Dupree. And, again, Gary, Alabama has a commitment, obviously, from Ty Lockwood. He's a really outstanding player out of the state of Tennessee. Probably would like to have another tight end in this class, obviously. I think, we'll see what happens with C.J. He visited Ohio State. They're certainly when Ohio State's recruiting a tight end, they tell you it's pretty good.
He's good.
So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, let's go back out on the phone lines and welcome in our pal CB right here in Tuscaloosa. Hey, CB.
Pretty good. How y'all, man? Mighty chilly out there. How many quarterbacks are we going to sign? I'm kind of out of the loop. What does it look like?
Well, we'll fill you in, CB. They're going to sign two. Holstein, who's already here, Eli Holstein, and Dylan Lonergan, who's going to play baseball. He's a great baseball player. But they're signing those two, plus hopefully you have Milroe and Simpson back. I think if you get all four of those guys, that's going to be a competition in the fall.
Yeah, it really is. And obviously, Holstein, you mentioned him being here. Lonergan's an outstanding baseball player. He's going to stay in high school, I think, Gary, and play this spring baseball. But when they get them all together in August, they've got some big shoes to fill.
Better be a good-looking group. All right, let's get to an email real quick before we have to go. Will Alabama baseball ever make it to the College World Series? Donald in Oxford's a good question. Hadn't been since 1999. To answer your question, Donald, I think they will. I don't want to tell you when, but I think eventually they'll make it back.
Yeah, let's hope so.
I think Jim Wells went there about 4 out of 5 years there for a while, but it's been a while. It's been too long. All right, we'll be back to wrap up this edition of TITV on a chilly night. It's going to get colder this week in Tuscaloosa, boy. But we'll be back to wrap it up right after this. Welcome back to TITV, Rod. We got about a minute here, but boy, signing day's changed a lot. Here we are, just a few days out from Christmas, and we're having signing day. It's still strange to me.
I was thinking about that on the way in, Gary. normally it's the first Wednesday in February, and now here we are looking at this signing period. Now, right before Christmas, they moved it back a week. So.
Plus, not nearly as much intrigue as there used to be.
No, there's not. But I tell you what, the portal and all the transferring, that certainly makes it interesting.
All right, that's going to do it for TITV. A reminder, you can catch a replay tonight at 10:30 on WVOA 23 or find it anytime at WVOA23.com. For Rodney Orr, I'm Gary Harris. We're going to leave you tonight with Alabama Gymnastics hosting its Crimson and White preview this past Friday night with new head coach Ashley Johnston. Tide showcased over 30 routines. Alabama will open the season at home against Michigan State January 6th at 6 p.m. Have a great night, everybody. We'll talk to you again next week on TITV.